innocence. I always thought that for such a lovely river, the name was mystifying, Cape Fear. And the only thing to fear on those enchanted summer nights was that the magic would end and real life would come crashing in.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're back again doing another break instrument, and I know I said I wasn't going to do too many more of these, but I've had so many questions this month of people asking me to kind of show the Soul Pride and a breakdown video of me making this instrument that I feel like I've got to do it. For anyone that doesn't know, over on Patreon I think we're on the 6th installment now, where I've essentially been taking these classic breaks and then processing them in all the old hardware, and then doing more kind of processing in the DAW, and then chopping them all up in different pieces and basically creating these massive instruments. You can see here, this month's one, I pretty much filled the whole keyboard, like 127 chops of the Soul Pride. And so whenever you want to use one of these classic breaks, you just have like the perfect template to dive in, and you don't really need to do anything. They're all programmed to run at 168 BPM, and then you can just pitch up and down the whole instrument to transpose it to different BPMs. And then I've also been translating them to loads of different DAWs and programs, and when I'm even doing the Digitakt 2 now. So I'm trying to make this available to as many people as possible. Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into the Soul Pride. And one of the reasons this break is quite complicated to work with, but also why it's so good for drum funk and intricate break chopping, is the amount of hit variations you have. I think there's like 7 or 8 different snares just in this one segment of the break, which isn't even the whole slice you can take. And there's these really cool rolls, so maybe we'll actually just start with a little bit of a refresh of how this break sounds. One thing about this, the Soul Pride, is a little bit sloppy, which sounds amazing at a slower tempo, but when you speed it up, you have to either kind of warp the break, or I've actually just quantized it mostly and programmed it on the grid in Renoise and then kind of sliced pretty tight to these transients. And the premise of this, how this kind of idea started, was to take all the best ingredients from the original Soul Pride and then reprogram them at drum and bass speeds. And then I essentially made these 17 patterns, all with different shuffles and rolls, and trying to utilize all the best bits of the break, and then kind of bake them into these ready to go patterns to use in your music. The other thing I really want to talk about is the processing, and this break has gone through the Akai a bit and my analog mixer, but I've not done any EQ or anything like that. And I've got quite a simple chain here, but I think it highlights some of the crucial steps to kind of get your break sounding fat. So maybe a good way to start this would be to do an A-B comparison between the break not processed and processed, so we can hear before we even begin what's going to happen. So you can probably tell I've got a much fatter kick in the one I've processed. So I've boosted the bass a lot, and I've kind of, it sounds like there's a little bit less mud in the mid-range, and maybe it's a bit brighter. So I've gone for like a smiley face EQ where you're boosting the bass and the tops and then leaving the mids a little bit where they are. And that's really because I just wanted to go for a fat sound. I actually like the break with no processing on it as well. I think it's equally as good, but I've just gone down a more experimental route and trying to make it more in the kind of drum funk style was what I went for this month. If I take you through these things one by one, let's maybe just go right from the beginning. So I'll start with the Transient shaper, just pulling in making the break a little bit tighter. And the reason I've done that is actually because I think I was using this compressor and hitting it pretty hard in here. So it brings out a lot of room sound and it makes everything sound really fat and adds a lot of energy to the break, but I wanted to control that a little bit. So the Transient shaper and compressor pulling in the sustain actually work really well together. Makes it sound a little bit cleaner. And then the next step is really 2 stages of EQ. One where I'm just doing... This is like a bit of a muddy frequency I was obviously pulling out. In that it just adds sort of a lot of extra noise, like low, mid energy noise in this muddy region. So I've just scooped that out. And then this one is making a massive difference. This EQ here, I'm doing a massive boost to lows. And then it looks like I'm pulling the highs, but I'm boosting this 5.6 kilohertz a bit as well, so I'm boosting the upper mids and boosting the lows. So it makes it brighter and definitely faster. If you listen to that kick, it now has a big like thump on it, whereas before it's quite light. So I wanted to make the break sound really fat was the goal here with the processing. And then the last thing is because I've done like the compressor has brought up some of the noise and the energy of the break, and then this EQ is bringing up more frequencies. I started to hear some resonances coming through, which you probably won't have noticed because you haven't been listening to that long, but it's the if I actually hold this headphone, it's these 2 frequencies up here and this one. So I just cleaned up, but this is a little bit of kind of housekeeping of the break. And maybe you wouldn't notice those resonances in a track, but I was just trying to make this sort of perfect. Especially when you've got something really loud like this, it always brings out weird artifacts. You then have to do a little bit of subtractive EQ at the end. But I haven't done any limiting or anything like that. And most of the saturation was done probably before in the Akai. And there's a little bit of drive on this EQ, but I haven't gone crazy with saturation either. So it's quite a simple chain, but actually if you compare the kind of beginning and after again, it definitely completely transforms the break and makes it just... it makes it sound cool. So I spent ages making these 17 main chops of the break, and some of them have got different EQ settings and stuff like that, but most of them I'm just playing with all of the different elements in the Soul Pride. So if we have a little demo of some of these. So they're all ready to go and will work amazingly in something like Amigo, but the whole idea of these projects is to have everything that's spanned up and down the keyboard in one big instrument. So I actually went and chopped up basically all of those 17. I took the best elements of them and then I chopped those up into sort of, 45 different slices. all spanned up and down the keyboard, longer sections, so you can sort of program with these longer chunks of the break and just see what you can come up with. It's definitely a very experimental one this month, but I think this kind of break, it called for it, rather than having sort of all those pieces, which is the problem most people have chopping up a break like this. So I'm trying to sort of decipher it and make it as easy as possible to get going with some of these more complex breaks. I've then got all of the sort of classic things like some lo-fi versions of the break. I resampled through the Akai, doing that sample rate reduction trick, and then loads of reverb hits, reverse hits, some of these Photech style rattle snares. I've got some really cool effects this month. I went to town. Akai stuff. Some cool half tempo ones, and then some phasey chops to finish with, and that basically makes this whole instrument. And there's not really too much to talk about from there. I think I've kind of exhausted going over these break instruments now, and I'm just going to keep doing them on Patreon and maybe do little guides over there, but I'm not going to do any more posts on YouTube unless lots of people hound me for them. But coming up, I've got a break layering 101 video I need to do towards the end of this month. Is the next big one, where I'm going to sort of show not only trying to fatten up breaks. So for instance, with this break I used EQ to give me a massive kick, but I could have layered a kick under the original and a snare instead of using EQ. So you have different pathways you can go down. So showing kind of break fattening and layering, and then also the kind of probably the most complex type of break technique, which is to have 2 or 3 multiple breaks playing at the same time. This is the kind of classic Source Direct Photech. What they became so renowned for was the interchange between multiple breaks. And I'm going to try my best to do a breakdown video of all of that. So that's what's coming up for me this month and in the future. And yeah, thanks for sticking with me for the channel. I know things have been a little bit slow at the moment, but I'm ramping up towards the end of the year and I've got lots to get through. So yeah, I'll be back soon with another video, and I'll catch you then. Peace.